Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Vanity and welcome. If you're new here, hi, how are you? Don't forget, hit subscribe button at the bottom and make sure you're clicking the notification bell so every time I'm uploading a new video, you are notified. I'm a little subdued. I'm a little nervous about doing this. I think I'm gonna do this in two parts. I'm gonna have a part one and I'm gonna have a part two. So I'm going to do this part one while I'm getting ready for church. I'm getting ready right now. I'm gonna do some light makeup and I'm about to change my clothes too. But this is going to be part one. And you'll see it in the title what I'm talking about. And if you saw my post, and I got quite a bit of you. This is probably the most likes I've gotten on a post since I've had this channel. So for those of you that did not see my community post, if you all have been paying attention to TikTok, the most talked about thing on TikTok right now has a lot to do with the documentary coming upon the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina. Like I said, I'm gonna do this in two parts, but I'm gonna do this in a different perspective. I'm gonna do this in a very different way, and I really hope after I'm done with both parts of these Vanity Talks that you will understand, particularly the people of New Orleans and the people of Mississippi, and I hope you understand. So what I'm going to do, I'm basically just gonna go through the history of these hurricanes from what I was told and what I lived through, and how we did with Hurricane Katrina living here in Baton Rouge, because what happened in Baton Rouge way different from what happened in New Orleans. And I'm just going to say now, a lot of us in Baton Rouge, when we found out what actually happened in New Orleans, shock, heartbreak. For me, it was anger. I had a lot of anger. I'm going to discuss the anger, and as I'm thinking about it, I'm getting angry all over again. I'm getting angry all over again. So we're going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it. And I am going to start off way back from before I was born. And like I say, the reason why I'm starting off that way is because I hope you understand the people of New Orleans, the people of Mississippi. And what also made me mad was how the people of Mississippi were being treated. And it was literally like people in Mississippi and Alabama were being ignored by what was going on in New Orleans, which what went on in New Orleans was devastating. But some people lately, like comments in TikTok, like one young lady, she got a comment about, ain't nothing happening in Mississippi. I live in Mississippi and we did just fine. That's because you're probably more inland in Mississippi than on the coast. You're not on the coast, and more like this was from a person that was living like in Jackson, Mississippi. You only gonna get like a little wind, rain, that's it. Okay? Okay. So let's get dressed. Let's go ahead and talk about it. So let's talk about the history of hurricanes leading up to Hurricane Katrina. All right, y'all gonna see me brush my teeth, wash my face, whole 9 yards as I gather my brain. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to start back a long time ago. This was before I was born, and I'm only going by what was told to me by my mom. And so we're gonna go back into the 50s, I believe. I think it was the 50s. I think, we're gonna go back to Hurricane Betsy, because that was one hurricane I kept hearing about, was Hurricane Betsy. All right, so we're gonna go back to Hurricane Betsy. And from what I was told and videos I saw and so forth, Betsy, my mom told me she had to be evacuated with Hurricane Betsy. Like I said, this was back in the 1950s. Betsy tore up like Lake Charles and everything. Betsy tore up Lake Charles, Lafayette. All they got tore up. It wasn't until recently, listening to a couple of people on TikTok about New Orleans being affected by Betsy. I had never heard about New Orleans being affected by Hurricane Betsy. But, and from the charts and what meteorologists have said, the winds here in Baton Rouge were horrible. Like, it was horrible. So, they had some rebuilding that needed to be done in Baton Rouge, but not the way it was like in Lafayette and New Iberia and definitely Lake Charles. Okay, now I'm going to mention Lake Charles a couple of times. I am going to mention Lake Charles. So, fast forward to, I believe, 1969. I was not born yet. And I'm going by what my mom told me and what I have read. 1969 was Hurricane Camille. Now, mind you, and this might be something I might be repeating over and over again. I might end up doing this in a 3-part series instead of 2-part series. This might be 3 parts. Per my mama, I want to say my mom and my grandmother, Hurricane Camille was supposed to have been the hurricane that was supposed to take out the city of New Orleans. Okay? That was supposed to have been the hurricane to take out New Orleans. So when Camille was approaching, so basically anything that happened in New Orleans, Baton Rouge had to get prepared too. And I'm going to say that too. We have to get prepared like New Orleans. And from my understanding is, and it's going to be a few words I'm going to use and I want y'all to keep in mind through these parts I'm going to tell y'all. From what I was told about Camille, right as Camille was getting ready to approach land, Camille stalled. And I'm going to tell you about hurricanes. When a hurricane is approaching and a hurricane stalls, that is not good. That is not good when a hurricane stalls. I'm going to mention that too. Hurricane stalling. You're going to understand what it means as I go down the line. Hurricane Camille stalled. And as Hurricane Camille stalled, Hurricane Camille changed course. And that's something else you're going to hear me use a lot. Changing course. Because these hurricanes do change course. And when they change course, you're caught off guard. It's going to mean something to y'all when I keep talking. So Camille changed course, tore Mississippi a new one. Mississippi got tore up so bad. I saw the pictures. They were devastating. And at that time, Camille was the strongest hurricane that ever hit. Now, mind you, and if you listen to like the weather and so forth, when there's a hurricane, hurricanes are rated by categories. Category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Category 5 is the worst. Category 1 hurricane don't really do nothing. I've been through many Category 1 hurricanes. They don't do nothing. You might lose power for maybe 12 to 24 hours. That might be about it. It might get a little light damage, but it's nothing to be alarmed by. Same with a Category 2. You're going to lose power. You might lose power for a couple of days. Ain't going to be too much. It's when it's a 3 and above is when you need to start worrying. Camille was a 5 when it struck. And from my mama, she said they got just wind and rain from Camille and they didn't get anything else. And now that I'm understanding, the reason why they got wind and rain was because they were on the west side of Camille. It's a difference. And you're going to always hear people say, you never want to be on the east side of a hurricane. Let me repeat that. You never want to be on the east side of a hurricane. And from what I saw, I think Baton Rouge and New Orleans were on the west side of Camille. Now, that's not to say they didn't get wind and rain, because my mama did say they did get wind and rain. New Orleans did get wind and rain. That was supposed to be the hurricane to take out New Orleans, was Camille. And the reason why when people say you live in New Orleans and I go, hell no, there's a reason why a lot of us, that's one city we ain't gonna live in is New Orleans. And it has nothing to do with the people or the crime or nothing like that. And I need people to get that out their mind. Stop saying that about the residents of New Orleans. That has nothing to do with it. The reason why we don't want to live in New Orleans, I know me. And at one point I thought about living in New Orleans, but the only thing I kept thinking of was the image of a Super Bowl. And the reason why we think about the image of a Super Bowl, that's why we call New Orleans a Super Bowl. New Orleans is below sea level, which means any storm that come in, it will automatically flood. That's why it floods so fast in New Orleans. New Orleans is below sea level. And if you look at New Orleans, how New Orleans is shaped. New Orleans is shaped in the form of a bowl. You see I have this cup. You see cup, bowl, whatever. The rim of the cup, of the bowl, is your levee system. That is what's holding the water back from New Orleans, is that rim. And in the bottom of that bowl is the city of New Orleans. It is below sea level. That is why you'll hear some people refer to New Orleans as a soup bowl. Or I would always say, I'm not living in that soup bowl. And that's something I've always referred to New Orleans. Has nothing to do with the people. It is below sea level. So any little weather is going to automatically flood. So after Camille, New Orleans came off unscathed. But they kept telling residents in New Orleans, you need to evacuate, need to evacuate, need to evacuate. This is the big one. This is the big one. So when Camille came, it turned out not to be the big one. For New Orleans, turned out not to be that. So the reason why, that's why a lot of people in New Orleans didn't evacuate. So that was a big storm. Now by this time I'm born, whatever. We're going to fast forward all the way to 1992. I was a senior in high school and we had just started. And one thing you heard a lot of people in New Orleans say, school had just started. Well, when school starts here in Louisiana, school starts in August. But school starts during peak hurricane season. So it's peak hurricane season. I had just started my senior year in high school. Now that whole year, 1992, hurricane season starts June 1st. Nothing happened in June. Nothing happened in July. You may have had a couple of waves. They turned out to be nothing. When I tell you that Gulf was quiet, the Atlantic was quiet, everything was quiet that year. It's almost like too good to be true. It was too quiet. So you got this little wave that began to form in the Atlantic. So everybody's watching it and they already said, if this become a named storm, this will be Andrew. So wave developed into a tropical depression. It went from a tropical depression to tropical storm. There was tropical storm Andrew. And Andrew developed kind of fast. Andrew developed to Hurricane Andrew, which is what you've heard, Hurricane Andrew, back in 1992. Hurricane Andrew was a Category 5, gunning straight for Florida. I remember when Andrew struck. Baby, Florida got towed up. And I mean towed up bad. Andrew got towed up. Real bad. Now, I'm also going to be referring to weather reports too, and why a lot of us to this day still give weather reporters the side eye. What Andrew was supposed to do and what they kept saying about Hurricane Andrew, which was, you're going to hear me say this, it was the same thing they said about Katrina. Andrew was supposed to hit Florida, make a north-northeast turn. So when Andrew struck Florida, Andrew was going to strike the panhandle of Florida, go up into Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and then dissipate. It was going to end up becoming a low-pressure system. But like Miami, Florida and all that was going to get the brunt of Andrew. Cat 5. And baby, that eye of Andrew was very defined. So we minded our business. Again, school had just started. I wasn't paying attention. Okay, Andrew struck. We going to bed. I got school. Blase, blase, blase. I'm a senior in high school. This is my senior year. I was one of those seniors. I only had 5 classes. I got out of school at 12 o'clock every day. And my mom would pick me up from school. And one thing me and my mom would always do together was make groceries. I didn't care how old I was. I've been doing it since I was a little girl. I was 16, about to be 17. I still would go to the store with my mom and make groceries. I kid y'all not. I kid y'all not. My mom, I got out of school at 12 o'clock. Blah, blah, blah. Teachers ain't telling us nothing. Not a thing. They were talking about Andrew. But all they kept saying was, oh yeah, Andrew struck Florida. Like what we were all saying. But what none of us knew was Andrew struck Florida. Andrew changed course. I got in the car. My mama picked me up. And I noticed in the back of her car was loaded with groceries, food. She was loaded down with food. So I'm looking at my mama. What you doing going to the grocery store without me? You know you go to the grocery store with me. You never go to the grocery store without me. I was upset. I was vehemently upset. My mom had turned her head and looked at me, and I thought my mom was gonna cuss me out. Y'all, my mom had more of the look of fright, and she was scared. She looked at me, and my nickname is Niecy. They've always called me Niecy. My mom would only call me Venetia when it was serious, or when I was getting in trouble. She called my name Venetia, and she looked at me. I don't think I've ever seen my mom that scared. She said, Venetia, you don't know, do you? I said, no, what? She said, them teachers didn't tell you anything? I said, tell us what? About Andrew. Oh, Andrew struck Florida and it gone. That's all we know. I mean, like, I'm sitting here still like, what's the big deal? She said, Venetia, that storm is in the Gulf of Mexico. They just evacuated New Orleans. Wait, what? She said, that's why I went to the grocery store. And I had to fill the car up with gas in the event we have to evacuate. She said that thing is a 3. They are predicting it to go back to a 5 and strike us head on. She said mainly New Orleans. Andrew was supposed to have been the next hurricane to take out New Orleans. Okay? Andrew. First it was Camille. Then it was Andrew. And I want to say, now that I'm hearing, Betsy was supposed to take out New Orleans. It didn't. I went from, Mom, I can't believe you, to fright. Just that fast. And my mom grabbed my hand and she said, calm down. Because already you getting scared. She said, we got to stay strong together. She said, your dad sent me to the store. Your dad, she said, Venetia, I've been up all morning. And when I got the news, what happened was when my mom saw the news about Andrew changing course, my dad had called my mom and told my mom, meet me at the credit union. My dad had a credit union. They had a bank and a credit union. And back in those days, that was, yeah, it's a long story with that. Basically trying to, you know, keep the money together. Daddy sent my mama to meet him halfway at his job. My daddy worked at a plant in Louisiana. He told my mama to meet him at the credit union. He was going to go to the credit union and pull money out. In the event something happens, we have to evacuate, we need cash. My mama got up. This is after I had got on the school bus. I don't know nothing. She met my dad at the credit union up there in St. Gabriel, Louisiana. I don't even know this to even had a credit union. Met my dad up there at the credit union. He just gave her cash. He took cash. I don't know how much money Daddy had pulled out. Daddy had gave my mama this cash, and then he had this cash. He said, B, go make groceries. Go make groceries. Just get the food, get as much as we can. And Daddy was asking about me, what time when she get out of school. And my mama told my daddy, she get out at 12. Go get her. I can't remember what day it was. It was a school day. That's why my mom's back seat was covered in groceries. So, got home. I remember unloading the groceries, putting things where they need to be. Mama was taking a lot of stuff and putting it in the back part of the freezer. You put a lot of stuff in the back of the freezer because in the event you lose electricity, that meat you want it to last as long as it can. Because once you out for so long and you have no electricity, it stinks and you have to throw that out. Hence why a lot of people have barbecue pits. And you're going to hear this too, barbecue pits. Because you got to cook all that meat before it go bad. Y'all, Daddy came home. And I remember going outside. It was like, I think it was the next day, the very next day. I had gone to school. I got out of school at 12. And it was a regular day. But we didn't have school the following day. Something like that. I don't know how it went. I remember going outside because Andrew was striking that night. Andrew was getting closer and closer. And I'll never forget, y'all, the skies was black. The sky was black. But no rain, no nothing. And it was quiet. And you've heard a lot of some people, if you heard their stories on TikTok, say it was the quiet before the storm. I was outside. Andrew churning in the Gulf. It was so quiet. But it was black. Like it was the black clouds, everything. I had never been that scared. And it was just too quiet. It was too quiet. So later on that night, I'm watching TV. I remember watching BET. I kept the TV on BET. That was the only thing that was going to keep me going and keep me away from the storm was BET. But it was kind of hard to watch BET if my parents is listening to the weather. It's hard. Went long, maybe 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, the electricity go out. By this time, at this time, Andrew, and when any storm does, right when Andrew's getting ready to hit land, Andrew stalled. Andrew stalled. When Andrew stalled, we knew that wasn't good. That means when a hurricane stalls, it's gaining more strength and also changing course. That is exactly what Andrew did. Andrew changed course. Instead of us being on the west side of Andrew, we ended up being on the east side of Andrew. So everybody that had evacuated from New Orleans to Baton Rouge, baby, was in the hunt of it. When I tell you our traffic was heavy, full of people from New Orleans. Baby, we got towed up. But not the way New Iberia, Lafayette, Morgan City, Louisiana, all on that coast, on that side towards the west. Baby, got ripped a new ass. We got ripped a new ass. Being that us in Baton Rouge was on the east side, there was a tornado that was near my house. I was real scared. I got so scared I was throwing up. That's how scared I was. Some way, somehow, I had fallen asleep. And when I woke up, the storm was still coming through. But most of it had already gone, but the wind and the rain was still going. It was still going. It was still going. It was still going. And my mom, my dad is sitting at the at the dining room table with the window up, smoking a cigarette like it was nothing. But now I understood why. They had been through this before. This was nothing new to them. This was new to me. So long story short with Andrew, when the people in New Orleans realized New Orleans got unscathed, it was like, what the hell? It's like, what the hell? Like, what? We got told we were without power for 3 days. And within that time period of being without power for 3 days, ice and water was like scarce, very scarce. And you're going to hear that a lot. People looking for ice and water. It was scarce and there was nothing. And by day 3, we had to clean up the house. We had roof damage, trees, limbs, like everybody was cleaned up. When I tell you, it was like a war zone after Andrew. It was a war zone. And that was my first time too understanding a hurricane menu. I'll explain hurricane menus. Hurricane menus is when you can't cook anything, you need food. These fast food restaurants like McDonald's, Burger King, Popeyes, all these different fast food restaurants, they have hurricane menu. You have your regular menu and then you have a hurricane menu. There's no alterations. You have to get exactly what's on that hurricane menu. All of these fast food restaurants here in Baton Rouge, are basically throughout South Louisiana, all have hurricane menus. They have hurricane menus probably in Mississippi and Alabama and Florida. We have hurricane menus because you never know. People are going to want food. People are going to be desperate for food, water, ice. By day 3, my dad got word that some guy had water and ice. So they had left to go get water and ice. And I said, well, y'all go. I'm going to stay here so I can clean up. And my dad was like, are you sure? Both parents was like, are you sure? I said, y'all go ahead and go. I was 16. So when my parents left, I remember I had began to clean up a little bit, started aligning things with candles because it started to get dark. I wanted to get as much as I could possibly cleaned up before it got dark, because when it got dark, it was dark. And lo and behold, while my parents were gone, the electricity had come on. And not only did electricity come on, the cable came on all at once. And I could not reach them because, of course, back then there were no cell phones. There were no cell phones. And you can't text nobody back then. So I just began cleaning up the kitchen. Clean up the living room, clean up the kitchen. And I was waiting on my parents to come back. And when I saw my parents come back, I ran outside. We got lights, we got lights, we got lights. And my mama said, I see the kitchen light on. I said, not too long after y'all left, the lights came on. She said, we got cable. I said, we got cable too. So when my mom saw what I was doing, she said, you got the kitchen? I said, I got the kitchen in the living room, mama. She said, well, I'm gonna help you with this part and this part. The damage. You don't know anything that's going on until the lights come on. The damage. The destruction Andrew did. Heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. And it took us a while before we can get over Andrew. So, I'm going to leave off right here. And when I come back, we're going to fast forward 13 years later, from 1992 to what everybody is talking about now, 2000.